Welcome back to the Sonoma County Library's Basic Book Repair video series. So last time we showed you how to prepare the text block and the case for a book to be rehinged. So I have that book right here, and we're going to show you how to do that in just a moment. But in the meantime, I found a couple of examples that I kind of wanted to show you some of the features that didn't show up on this book. So this one has been detached from, the text block has been detached. As you can see, it's quite a mess. It's a very heavy book. So in this case, I would go ahead and just peel off the craft here and replace it with another sheet of craft paper, or if you have a good piece of heavy construction paper or paper. So you would peel this off. You could use a variety of tools, but most of the time it comes off pretty easy. I would then maybe do a little sanding to get that off. Again, trimming all this off, but definitely want to put a piece of craft paper down, or sometimes I use cardstock. It all depends upon how thick the craft was. And then of course you would prep this, trim this, do all the same things, and also line with cloth tape. The other one I wanted to show you is a paperback. So with a paperback, sometimes we can hinge them when they're completely fully out. Oh, look at those dog ears. Okay, so if you do decide that you want to hinge it rather than just trying to hit it with some glue, you can do the same thing, use when you see the demonstration on how to hinge it. But always remember that you have to remove the end sheets and reattach those after you've hinged them. So sometimes I can just pull them off, trim them. So you would hinge it after it's hinged, then you would glue these on after the hinge. Okay, so I wanted to show you that you could do the same thing on a paperback. So let's get started with hinging. So I'm going to show you a variety of sizes of double stitch binder tape, and show you why we're choosing to use the size that we're using. So when we're selecting our size of double stitched binder tape, what we're looking for is matching the text block up to the, you can see here the stitching here, and so there's the area between the stitches, and you could always measure it and then measure the book. But I prefer to actually use the text block and place it in between the two to see where and what is going to work. So right now I have 1 1/4 to 1 3/4 to show you, and why I choose what I choose. Now I have two kinds of 1 1/2 size, and as you can see, this one is green, and it's got nice stitching. This one, a little bit thicker stitching. This one is white. So sometimes that might matter with a particular book, or you might like a specific product. So I'm going to start with the 1 1/4. So I'm going to push these back and show you. So with this, I'm going to do it this way so you can see. So I'm going to line it up. Now, as you can see, it's just shy of reaching all the way to the edges. So we're going to skip the 1 1/4. I'm going to look at the 1 3/4 next. So we're going to put that one on. I'm going to show you that it's much bigger. So we're not going to want to use that. So we're going to want to choose something in the 1.5 range. Now, as you can see, that side right there lines up real beautifully. And if I bring it around, it lines up beautifully on the other side. So we're definitely going to want to use a 1/2 inch, 1.5 inch. So I'm just going to make sure this one lines up the same way. So that's beautiful. And this is just a hair bigger. So I think I'm going to go ahead and use this size. Okay. So how I like to measure and cut is I like to bring this all the way up to the edge here and bring this all the way to the edge here, if you can see that. I'm going to make a little mark here because that's going to tell me where I want to cut. And I always want to cut nice and straight if I can. So I'm going to cut myself a nice straight piece of double stitch binder tape. Okay. And again, going to want to place it on there. Looks good, so we're going to use that. Okay, so what I'm going to need is a sheet of waste paper. I'm going to need a brush, and I like to use a pretty thick flat brush, so either one of these will really work well. So I'm going to use both of them. So I'm going to get them wet. I'm going to fill my glue container. And as you can see, I'm putting in a lot of glue. So I want to make sure I have enough because I'll be working quick. Okay, so I've got my book oriented. I've done all the trimming. It's ready to go. I want to kind of get my sides open. Now, there's two schools of mending. Some people like to lay it down like this and spread the glue on. Me, I prefer to hold it like this and spread my glue on. And then I'm already in position. I like to get a little concave there because basically I'm going to be taking my book and smashing it in there. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start with the flat brush first, if I can get some bristles going. I have cotton here in case I need to sop anything up. I've got shop towels. I got a waste sheet for dripping on, and I am just going to do it. And I like to brush from the inside out. I like to make sure I get enough glue on there. And I brush from the inside out. And as you can see, I'm probably going to get a lot of glue on me. Mainly, I really want to make sure that all these edges. Now, the main reason why we use a little bit of water on our brushes to start is there is gum on the double stitch binder tape. And that gum works really well with water. So now I've got a lot on. Want to take off any excess. I got some over here and over here. So now what I need to do is fit my book on here. And I start at the top. Work my way over to the bottom, slide it over. See if you can see that. Working my way over. Okay, so now I'm going to start working on so I want to take my bone folder and I want to make sure I get this nice and good. So I'm really going to work this on here. The nice thing about the double stitch binder tape is you can always trim it after it's dried. So I got that nice and good, so that side's secure. Get this nice and secure using my bone folder. I want to make sure it gets on there. And then lastly, I'm going to make sure it's nice and tight on the spine. Smooth that out. Make sure there's no ruffles. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if any glue has oozed out. And I do not see any glue. I make sure the ends are very tight. And then I'm going to leave this to dry. And I want to leave these flaps out because I don't want any glue. So I'm going to leave this to dry and I'm going to place a weight on top of it. And I want my weight about close in. And I want to make sure my text block is nice and true. Because that's the one thing with rehinging a book is so often what happens is you change the entire shape of the book, and then when you attach the case, you discover that there's this huge section that's sticking out. So you really want to, early in the game, make sure everything's true. Okay, so we're going to allow that to dry. Usually 2 to 3 hours, but I like to do everything overnight. And then we'll show you how to put it into the case. Okay. So now that our text block has had the opportunity to dry, we've put our hinge on here, we're going to now put it into the case. But I had mentioned last week, I noticed there was a lot of dirt. So I wanted to go ahead, before I get it back in the case, and do a little sanding. Now this sandpaper is too. So I want to do a finer grit. So this is pretty much the finest you can get. It's 400. So I'm just going to give it some. Basically, I just want to take off some of those stains. These are going to be a little tougher because they're more ingrained, but I can at least get it looking a little bit better. Okay, and I'll finish the rest of it later. I just wanted to show you that while you have it like this, you can get rid of some of those stains. Also, this can be picked off and then covered with a colored pencil or a marker. Okay, so here we go. Now, again, I, of course, like to work with this. So I'm going to move this away, and I'm going to put a couple of sheets under here, waste sheets, so that we don't get... I'm going to have my bone folder ready, and I'm going to just slather the glue right on here. And then the most important thing is making sure that you case it in correctly so that you don't want your book upside down. So always working from broad strokes, never back and forth. Definitely need more glue. Just always want to make sure you get it on those edges. And then I always have, again, a shop towel, cotton swab, some cotton balls ready to absorb any extra. Okay, so now I have my book upright. I have my casing correct. And I'm going to, I like to do this like this. Some people like to do it down here, which is fine, but I like to just get it right on there. Okay. Now this is where it gets a little intriguing, because you really want to make sure that you're lined up really good. Go over just a little bit more. Make sure you're nice and stretched out. Okay, and then I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to run it over, seal that down really good. I'm going to put a sheet of waxed paper here on this side. I'm going to swivel it around so you can see. I'm going to get this side down, and I'm going to put a piece of waxed mending paper down over here. I'm going to close up my sides, and then most importantly now, I'm going to work it in from the foredge. That's the final thing. So I'm working it in from the foredge, pushing down, pulling up, making sure I work it in really good. I see that there's an area that's going to need to be fixed. I could either put tape over that or put some glue later. So now I also want to really get my spine nice and tight. So I'm also going to use my bone folder on the edges and on the flatness. Now we showed you in the half hinging that we needed to put a strip of wax mending paper down so that we could keep what's called the tube in shape. With the double stitched binder tape, the tube is naturally made into it. So now that I can see, I'm going to make sure there's no glue in any of my little spots. See a little bit right there. Okay, and again, we're going to use the rubber bands to hold everything in place. I'm happy with where my text block is. I'm just going to use 2 rubber bands on this one. And then I've got it lined up, looking good, and I'm now going to use another weight. So now we're ready to look at the hinging that we did. This is the whole hinging, and I'm going to remove the rubber bands and the sheets of paper. Okay. So there it is. Looks good, nice and tight. The only thing we need to do with this one now is add the end paper. So in this case, it's 2 sheets together because it's what's called the half title. And then this is the title page. And then that we're going to be replacing. But, you know, for historical purposes, I like to leave this nice old thing. So what we're going to do is take a piece of waste paper sheet, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue along this edge. I'm working so you can see what I'm doing. As you can see, we have a little bit of a ruffle here. Not too concerned about it because it's cased in really beautifully. So let's grab a brush. and put a layer of glue along this edge so that we can attach our end paper, which we needed to pull off. And again, as always, I'm lining it up with the foredge, but in this case, it's a little bit shorter, which is fine. So I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to seal it along this edge. And that's the final thing. Now, sometimes with a book, you may not like how this turns out, or it may have really beautiful end papers. You know, a lot of times they're marbled, they're very nice. In that case, what I've done in the past is I've taken a photograph, Xeroxed a copy of, like these were really beautiful end papers. And then I will cut and match and just paste a sheet over it so you can't really tell the book was ever hinged. Again, I'll take all those stains off and it's going to be getting a brand new cover. So that is what a whole hinging looks like.